Hey everyone, Nathan Nerdark here from Nerdarchy for Nerds by Nerds, and today I'm going to be talking about Lex Starwalker and we're doing a video response to his Game Master's Journey podcast series. And with me I have...
I'm Ted.
I'm Dave.
Now, I didn't get to listen to it, so I kind of want
well,
you
that's
guys to
kind of odd
tell me
since you're
about
going to be the one talking about it.
I was just bringing it in, but it's more of like an interview process because I know what I think about Dungeon Master.
So okay.
And
it's
specifically, kind of like avoiding lazy dungeon mastering.
Yeah, it's only loosely a video response. We watched his video.
It's like video inspiration.
Well, he actually watched one of our videos, and he was inspired to do his episode on how to not be a lazy DM and help out your players. So
Which he inspired us to.
So he asked for our take on it. So I told him, okay, well, we'll go ahead and do a video response to essentially your video response.
So it's like a video response, but it's also about not being a lazy dungeon master.
Right.
Even though we usually advocate for being a lazy dungeon master and buying the Lazy Dungeon Master book. so what is it? It's confusing. We're going back and forth here. What does it all mean? That's what we're going to dig into.
Lex's key point is, as you develop your dungeon mastering skills, there is more about the game that you understand. There's more that you have in your head. You don't have to rely on, going and looking stuff up. Your game preparation actually takes less time the better of a DM you are, because you're able to do more on the fly. You're able to know more of just the general mechanics. So you won't have to say, hey, I'm running that fifth edition game for the first time. My player's a rogue. How does sneak attack work? And that was one of the things that actually happened to him. He had a rogue in his game. He ran 5th edition, and he had no idea how sneak attack worked.
And in retrospect, he's like, I should have known I should look this up because the rogue's going to sneak attack.
Absolutely.
And he's correct.
it's a key point of the rogue's combat effect.
So foresight as not being a lazy DM is really saying to yourself, should I know this before the game? Should I have prepped?
He brings up a really great example. This is an aquatic underwater adventure. I should probably know how underwater combat works.
Right.
As an example. And that's a great example. Again, he also talks about, hey, I know I'm going to use a certain spell. Maybe I should have, a basic understanding of that spell before it's ever cast by the monster or bad guy, because, I know it's going to happen. I don't need to look it up during gameplay.
Right. Otherwise, you're just creating lag time by not doing it beforehand.
And I recently in a game I ran, I had that happen. I forgot to have a spell, the spell information written down, so I had to then find the spell and be able to use it. So
there's two different things. There's lazy GMing and there's being a lazy dungeon master, right? They're completely different. The lazy dungeon master doesn't over prepare. The lazy GMing is you're just lazy at the table, and you're not. And this is actually a bigger problem with older GMs who've been doing it a long time than newer ones, and sometimes players will exasperate the problem as well. Maybe you've described the kobold 100 times, and it's like now you're just like, it's a kobold, right? But you might have a player at your table that's never played Dungeons and Dragons before, and he doesn't know what a kobold is, and you're really robbing that player of the experience. And the other side is that, and Lex talks about this, and I've had it happen in my sessions, is you're describing a monster, and I'm like, an 8-foot tall shaggy beast with the head of a bull and the horns, and gigantic horns.
That's a minotaur.
Yeah. And you're like, just fuck you guys, fuck you all, and at that point, and it's because we've been playing it, and it's like I don't know. So I've probably been guilty as well. You want to show your vast, superior Dungeons and Dragons knowledge as a player, so you feel the need to throw.
It's like your nerd cred. Like, how much do you know about swords? Kind of thing. Like that kind of getting into it. It's like, oh, I was the first one to guess what that monster was.
Yeah.
In one of the games I recently ran, I kept describing the creatures, and I kept using something descriptive, and the second or third or fourth time I said something,
you're like the kobold.
I said the name, and they're like, "Oh, so it's that." I'm like, "Oh crap!"
No, that's not what happened because I watched the video. Right? They're like a little bit later. They're like, "Oh, another kobold." You're like, "How do you know it's a kobold?" Because you said it. Oh yeah, I did.
Now,
Totally did that.
one of the things that some people have an issue with lazy dungeon mastering is that, let's say you make, there's 2 roads to go, or left or right, and it's kind of like, well, either way, to me, either way they go, they're going to go to some place that I wanted them to go anyway.
Right.
But some people are like, well, I've made this part be this way, and the left fork is this particular adventure, and the right fork is this particular adventure. And even though I've prepped everything for the left fork, they went down the right fork, so I'm going to have to do something over here.
Yeah.
I was like, no, I just will switch them, because the only person that matters to in reality is me.
Right.
Because I decided for some reason that it's the left. So I was like,
you should absolutely
just shift it.
Give your players agency in your world, but that is not one of the places they need it.
No, that you don't have to develop all this stuff and then be like, oh, they went someplace I didn't prepare. No, one of the places I prepared is now the place they went. The end. You know,
one of the things too is like you could even use like maybe you don't want to do a ton of prep work. And there are a lot of good reasons for not doing it, as there is for doing it. But actually writing out descriptions can be the biggest waste of time if they never come into play in your game. Mm-hmm. But what you could do is write down 5 or 6 keywords to make you think as the dungeon master going, oh, wait a minute, if you want to convey something. So this way you didn't write a paragraph.
Right.
You just wrote a handful of words on a paper. If it doesn't get used, it doesn't get used.
And to kind of take a lesson from the Lex's podcast and the lazy dungeon master, so that you're getting the most amount out of your prep. If you're a DM who's been around the block for a while and you are forgetting to be descriptive, maybe give yourself a little tack note on your DM screen. It says engage the senses.
Yeah.
Give yourself some kind of reminder to say, okay, all right, it's been a while since I've had any kind of tactile sensation or any kind of smell. So let's do a little bit here, just so that they get a little bit more immersed in what you're doing. They get a little bit more a part of the world,
and that can be included in the prep that Dave's talking about, where you write down a few
keywords.
And so you say, oh, my dungeon, what type of dungeon is it? Is it wet? Is it dry? Is it clean? Like there's some kind of gelatinous cube or some other thing that goes around and munches everything up. Has anybody else stepped in it in the past 50, 100 years? Are there footprints, old footprints?
Is it coated in dust and spider webs, and hasn't shown any actual surface, contact in a while?
And whatever's going to jog that in your head. So is this an uninhabited, or is it a monster dungeon?
Like your descriptive for the overall dungeon, like you said, might be it might just be gelatinous cube maid service. So okay, everything is glistening clean. There's no traces of any rubbish anywheres.
Mm-hmm. Which is very unlike a dungeon in which people aren't.
It's not musty. It's not dusty. It's not dirty.
Yeah,
it's fabulous.
It's fabulous. It's squeaky clean.
So, I don't know, I totally derailed myself. Train of thought.
So basically, you don't want to over prepare. You don't want to under prepare, but you want to get the most amount out of your prepared material as you can. Nate says, give them the illusion of choice. When you come upon a path, okay, well, are they going left or right? Well, they are perceiving choice and they go left.
And there's the important thing. See, if you feel like, oh man, I feel like I'm doing something bad, then that's your punishment. You've just got to feel like you're like, I'm railroading them and they don't even know it. And I'm going to take that secret to the grave.
Well, yes,
because the second you tell them, now they're railroaded all the time.
You don't have to let them know when a decision that's made is an illusion of choice or an actual choice. That's your DMing toolbox. That's your secret, and keep that.
We actually had a really long and good conversation about illusion of choice. DDD brought it up on Dungeon Masters and Game Master, DM and GM stuff. It's a Facebook group. I just can't remember the exact thing of it, but they know who I'm talking about. Just look up DM and GM stuff, and it was really good, interesting conversations about it. It's basically like a help thing for GMs and DMs, and they bring up different topics. And one of them was the illusion of choice.
Completely railroading your players is never a direction you want to go, but having that time where you have the illusion of choice and choice engaged in your game.
And that's not a railroad either, because like here's the deal, right? It can be, but if you're saying left or right and they're both going to lead to the same place, what if they turn around and just go back to town? If going back to town actually leads into the same place then that might be railroading.
Yeah, well,
you're not playing Escape.
Yeah,
that's what happened.
Either something seriously magical has had to happen to basically take that away, and that creates a new plot hole, a new plot device, which you then have to contend with in order to make it all work.
Yeah,
but when you have that option, okay, well, your preparation said they were going to go right, they chose left. Well, that right, there is now something there that, or vice versa, where the direction they didn't go, there's something there that if they choose to go back, you're now going to have to put something in, or improv, or use the material you didn't use, because it's there. It's an option for the players to do.
Funny story. Recently, when I ran the Maze of Mandoon, right? Like, so the premise is if you go somewhere's enclosed, seek shelter, and then come out, you're going to be in the Maze of Mandoon. And one of the players actually brought up another choice that I did not conceive of. Right? Okay. And it was Anthony Amato from Cardboard Fortress playing the Goblo, and he's like, "What if we just go to the mansion like we were going to? There's the plantation that you guys are going to anyway. We could go inside there. That dude has a roof." And for a second, I'm like, yeah, they could do that. There is a roof there, and they could get out the weather. And that will completely derail what I actually planned for this evening. Now, that being said, I would have allowed it, and then I would have had to figure it out as I went. But but again, so like, because my brother was breaking my balls too. Don't roll the dice like my brother, because he's like, oh, this is a railroad. But the truth of the matter is, it was only a railroad once you enter the Maze of Mandoon, and even then, you can choose to do nothing, but then you'll be trapped forever. But up until that point, you do have free agency and choice, and someone actually offers something up that I hadn't really considered that they might do. And one of the reasons why I sidetracked you guys into Maze of Mandoon was because we were down a player for the night, and I knew we were going to be down a player. So I'm like, well, what can I do with these guys? In the meantime, and I can separate this one party member. I even have a reason why he doesn't get sucked into the maze. And, it all kind of works nicely. And then players do what they do every time. They fuck you and go, hey, we could just do this. I'm like, oh, my God, they could just do that. and it was a viable option. And, and again, it's at those points where you go, okay, well, I don't think all roads lead to the same place in this instance, because it doesn't make sense here.
Right.
Maybe after they leave dimensions, left dimension, they could be shuttled into that alternate dimension or whatever. But in the meantime, that wouldn't work that way.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I just thought I would put it in there since we're talking
rewarding player insight, especially if it's going to be something difficult.
Sometimes it just comes up and you just got to deal with it. You figure out.
And there are times that as a DM, the players do something unexpected, and you are going to have to entirely do improv. I've done many completely improv sessions with games that I've ran. Some of them have been the best things I've ever run. Some of them have possibly been the worst I've ever run. So, I mean, it's
you don't want to punish the players for being creative, because you're going to train them to not be creative anymore, and your games are going to all just kind of suck and drag, and it'll be your fault because you felt your story was so important that you felt you always have to control everything and give no free agency.
Yeah, and that's more of the railroad concept rather than, having your prep not be concrete set in stone where it exists in this, map that only exists in your head.
Your story, your material has to be clay that you and the players at the table mold the story together. You're not DMing with an iron fist. I've played in games like that, and there's not as much fun. I mean, you can enjoy the game because you like the fellow players and you like your character, and that can keep it compelling.
Was it Lex that brought up the point that it's not really your job to tell to tell the players what their characters do or how to feel.
Yes.
I had I listened to the podcast last night, but earlier than that, I was had another Google Hangout discussion with one of our viewers, Dwayne, and he interacts with us a lot on Facebook. So I'm trying to figure out if I'm merging the two together or not.
No. Lex did say that you're not supposed to tell your players what they are doing. I occasionally expand upon things when I have a player who is a little less descriptive. There was a character in my Dragon Hunter games who he's not overly confident with his descriptions of his actions and this and that. So like there was times where I'm like, well, do you want me to say it? And when he actually did something, he described it, and I'm like, well, I think this was a bigger moment, and I then carried the description further and embellished it. I don't feel that I overstepped him, that I was undoing what he did. I just made it more visual to the people listening or watching or playing, however.
So I think the key here is not being lazy at the table, not engaging the senses, making sure that you just because you've described that monster 100 times, that you still describe it 101 times, just like you did the very first time you ever did it. Don't worry about whether your players at the table know. And Lex brought up a great point. If your players interrupt you, interrupt them back in essence, and it's
just say, "Hold on a second, let me finish this."
Yeah, catch their eye. Give them 1 minute. They just want to get their thing off. But okay, what I'm describing, for the most part, time stands still. As far as giving the visual description of the room, the scene. Now, if you're doing that, and then your villain goes into a monologue, if the players then want to interrupt him, they can possibly do that. But then you might go, okay, well, let's roll initiative, and you might go, if your villain happens to win, you might go, well, he's going to keep monologuing. He's got his round, and you guys will listen.
That's it. He was you mentioned rolling initiative, and that's something that Lex did. He suggested that if people are trying to do stuff and it's not actually combat, feel free to resolve things in initiative order, even though it's not an actual combat.
You know what?
Still get
we did that in a recent game. I did that in a recent game, and it totally befuddled some of the players at the table. But we rolled initiative. Yes, it's initiative to say who's doing what in what order, just for a semblance of, of some consistency.
Order,
yeah.
Right.
And I'm pretty sure there was like 1 or 2 players that, but we rolled initiative. We got to fight. I'm like, yeah, we'll get to that. But for now, this is the order of the sequence of events.
Right.
Especially if you have people that are doing counter things, that are actions that are counter, or like if I'm trying to sneak around a corner and someone's trying to shout that I'm there.
Oh, it was during the wagon scene. It was during the wagon scene, and it and really, like, Lex explained it way better than I did. Like, that was my kind of like my thought process when doing it. But I just wanted to organize a sequence of events a little bit better.
Right. And sometimes you as the GM need to be aware of what's going and how things progressing. Initiative can be a good tool to work with. Other times it's it can be annoying because, like, this is a much bigger topic, but technically, initiative, everyone should describe, okay, this is what it looks like everyone's going to do, and you start with the lowest and you describe this way, and then let this person react, and you go down the order, so that you can have more of a novelization effect where it's like, okay, well, the wizard starts to cast his spell. All right, well, I'm going to try and disrupt it, as opposed to now where it's like, okay, you just roll initiative. All right, well, I go at the top, so I just okay, well, I'm going to shoot the fighter because I have no idea the wizard's going to cast a spell.
While that is true being said, it does add a lot of time to the game if you do it that way, because essentially everyone is almost like doing 2 actions on their initiative, and one of them doesn't really matter.
Right.
And then that's why
it's the difficulty of turn base.
Yes. So
individual turn base. Yeah.
So just throwing that out there. If you want
everyone can just free for all and just throw dice on the table. I do this.
I do this stuff. Or if it's
I've got more dice.
let's say it's a non-combat scene and you're rolling initiative. Well, I don't think someone that's like +4 dexterity but modifier should really be going before somebody with like let's say it's like a discussion or something, or like something that's could be based on another ability score. You could even change it up and base it on like.
I think they should go first if they do something like yell chicken. That has nothing to do with anything, because then it really is just a matter of being faster.
Yes.
All right, so I think we've gotten through this one.
Well, the only thing I would touch on is the idea of being a lazy dungeon master real fast, because that was all stuff having to do with lazy GMing.
Okay.
But being a lazy dungeon master is really about knowing what to prep and what not to prep.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's really like those cheats for speeding up your game. You know, there's certain things you can do. Like index cards are great for just putting down notes that you can pull out as you need them.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things I've done is because I knew I was going to cast a spell, I have spell cards. I have them ready.
Yeah.
And it's a lot easier and quicker to pull a spell card out of a stack of the ones you've selected than it is to find a spell in a book. Yeah, so there's little tricks you can do to be a lazy dungeon master that doesn't really take away from what you're doing in the game itself.
Right.
Now, if you want to take a
All
second.
right, so you guys go check out his podcast and check out his series if you haven't seen his stuff before.
We'll put a link in the bottom.
While you're go ahead and doing that, feel free to click like, share, subscribe. You know the drill.
You guys can even check us out on nerdarchy.com.
Enjoy the conversation over on Reddit.
So until next time,
Stay nerdy.